Howdy, I'm Hannah and this is my biofuel video project. For some background information, ethanol is a clear, colorless liquid used as a renewable fuel. The production of bioethanol fuel involves a process known as fermentation, which converts the sugar in the plant materials into ethanol. It is typically produced from crops such as corn, sugarcane, and wheat, although it can also be made from non-food crops such as switchgrass. It's produced from various types of plant materials through fermentation. The plant materials used to produce bioethanol are grown and cultivated in a manner similar to other agricultural crops. In all cases, the cultivation of bioethanol crops involves the use of fertilizers, pesticides, and other inputs to support plant growth and maximize yields. The environmental impacts of bioethanol cultivation depend on the specific crop being grown and the management practices that are being used. Ethanol, the primary component of bioethanol fuel, is produced through a process called fermentation. During fermentation, microorganisms, typically yeast, break down sugars or starches in plant materials to produce ethanol and carbon dioxide. So basically, the simple sugars obtained from the feedstock are then mixed with yeast or other microorganisms and are allowed to ferment. It can also be produced through feedstock preparation, enzymatic hydrolysis, distillation, and dehydration. Bioethanol has been in use for many years, and the production technology is improving steadily. Various research efforts are ongoing to improve efficiency and reduce the environmental impact of bioethanol production. It's anticipated that continuous research and development will further raise the effectiveness as well as boost its competitiveness as a fossil fuel substitute. It's worth noting that the carbon footprint of bioethanol is not zero. The production process itself requires energy, which can come from non-renewable sources, and there are emissions associated with the cultivation of the feedstocks. Bioethanol fuel affects the carbon footprint through the type of feedstock used, the production method that's employed, and the energy inputs that are necessary to make the fuel. In recent studies, the carbon footprint has decreased because of corn ethanol. I've included a quote from an Argonne National Laboratory researcher who is quoting the first author of the study. The corn ethanol production pathway, both in terms of corn farming and biorefineries, has evolved greatly since 2005. All in all, greenhouse gas emissions have decreased by about 23%. The economical stability of rural areas has been greatly affected by the ethanol business. I've included some statistics from the National Corn Growers Association. In 2019, the U.S. ethanol industry helped support nearly 349,000 direct and indirect jobs. Ethanol contributed more than $43 billion to the gross domestic product and added $23.3 billion to the household income. This generated more than $10 billion in tax revenue for federal, state, and local governments. There isn't an extensive amount of communication with the public, but from common use and research, the public can see the potential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. There's actually a Nebraska Ethanol Board that holds meetings which are open to the public, which I thought was neat. There is much potential from ethanol to reduce dependence on finite fossil fuels, as well as provide more sustainable source of energies. It can be considered a carbon neutral energy source, which is important for mitigating climate change impacts. Negatively, it still pollutes the environment during production. For my recommendations, I would look into Brazil's consumer plan and compare it to the United States. Take into consideration what they've done to achieve sugarcane as their main source for production of ethanol, whereas ours is corn. My plan of action would be to propose an increase in corn production and continue doing the research to gain more knowledge on economic effects. I'd also experiment with other crops besides corn for a long period of time to see if the outcome produced a better chance for overall effectiveness financially and environmentally. These are the sources I used, and thanks for watching.